I'd like to introduce our guest on today's hot set, Brent Kawchuk, a producer for over 30 years in Calgary, Alberta, and an industry engagement leader at Bow Valley College. Starting off, I guess my first question is a little more broad. What was the first film experience you saw that made you feel like you wanted to dedicate your life, or the first experience around the industry?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, thanks for having me. This is good. Nice to be first up with this. Well, I don't know if it was a film experience necessarily. I think, I was that kid that in grade 3 approached my teachers and said, hey, if we have extra time, can we put on a puppet show? And my hand would be first up at show and tell. I would be the guy in the neighborhood putting on the dog show, things like that. So there was always something there to put something on, to make a show, rather than it being a film. But, like early films, there's so many, that I saw.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big part of it for everyone, myself included, is that people don't realize that the film industry encompasses so much just within the creative lens, and how many, I guess, different skills and pieces go into that. Because I know for me, what really inspired me was looking at all the behind the scenes contents, not the movies themselves. So I guess it's more of a broad look than people realize, and more of a broad category than people realize. And there's spaces for everyone in that way. I guess the next question would be, through that, how you kind of found your way from going from just a kid who loved to put on productions or have productions around them to actually going into like a career or into education in that way.
Well, it was actually into education. Like everybody else, I'm in grade 12 thinking about what I do next. And, I have an older brother who went on to become a doctor and things. And so, of course, you go to university, you do these things. And, I had been a camp counselor, music teacher, all those things when I was growing up in high school. So it's like, so now what do I do? Well, I've done these things. My exposure to the world has been through these things. So therefore, I should be a teacher. So I actually went and got an ed degree and became a junior high teacher, substitute teacher, and all of those things. And, I was watching friends around me that were involved in the film industry, and my upbringing was like, wait a minute, you can do that? That's a job? That's something? But I always liked news and writing and things. So when I was in university studying to be a teacher, I also was working at the campus newspaper, campus radio, campus TV. And so when I was out substitute teaching, it was like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to do this. And at the time, it was really difficult to get into education. So it was like, well, maybe I go back and make the hobby the job. And so I went back and took journalism school and got into it more from a news focus that way than the other way. But the thing that really kind of put it over the top is I had a friend, a director that I still work with all the time, a guy named Grant Harvey. And he was running his own small production company at the time and doing commercials, music videos, all of those things. And he said, hey, I'm working with these guys on this music video. Do you want to come on as third AD? And I didn't even know what that stood for, let alone know what the job was. But I said, okay, sure. So I canceled my substitute teaching gig the next day and went on set to be third AD of a music video that was for the tragically hip New Orleans is sinking. So back then, I was in Mac Hall in Calgary trying to convince students to come and be in the audience of this band that they went, well, I've never heard of them. How much time you want? I got something to do. So convincing them to come in and be in the shots. And then when they shot the show that night, it was more wrangling the audience to be in the live shots for it. So that and watching my friends around me was like, okay, well, maybe all this newspaper and radio stuff, I can turn that into the job, and went and did journalism school instead.
And that's a pretty, I guess, individualistic path there. Not many people go from teaching into film. But with that, how you kind of said that it was sort of troubling to try and convince kids to like come to the music video and get people sort of involved in that way. Would you say that has changed from then to now, or morphed at all?
No, that's always been the same. And education is still part of it, because we in this business, and you know this, you're always dealing with people that don't have experience. What we do is this foreign, weird thing that maybe they don't see as serious, or maybe they don't understand. the skill and the expertise that goes into doing it right. So there's always an educational quality to bringing people on board for what you want to do, whether it's shooting in the real world, whether it's having a guest, or just telling a story. You're bringing other people along that might not understand what we all do here.
Kind of going along with that, the availability to get into this type of work has kind of morphed and changed throughout the years. What would your perspective be on the changes from when you went into the industry versus now, in terms of like people who are ready and actively want to go into the industry?
Well, that's a good question. I was actually teaching a course at, if I could say this, another post-secondary for a couple of semesters in terms of getting students ready for their internships and beyond. And there's always that sense of self-advocating that you have to do. And I think it's more difficult now. It was difficult when I started. So the process hasn't changed. You have to kind of create your own work, create your own networks. And that doesn't mean being the loudest, squeakiest wheel, the most type A person. Because, you know, if you look around your set right now and in your classes, not everybody is like that. Not everybody should be. And the beauty of this industry is there's room for everybody.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's something I've definitely realized along the way, is no matter what skills you have, you can find a place in the industry. And that's what's one of the most inspiring things to me, because you just get to meet so many different types of people. In terms of your job specifically, we've kind of talked about like the interactions both your jobs have had throughout your career, but how would you define what you do both at the college and as a producer in your own words?
Okay, well, sorry, I'll back that up and just
absolutely.
to my story about how I got in was a little bit through a side door in a different way. When I was in journalism school, I got out and was like, okay, I'll send the resumes out, I'll do all of those things, and thought if I come up with an idea, maybe somebody will hire me, because just, you know, this is older, but you mailed them to people. Right? or you took them in and you handed it to somebody. But that only gets you a certain way. So it's the same as advocating for yourself now and other means, that I needed to, in my opinion, come up with an idea. So if I went to the local TV station with an idea, maybe they'll give me a job. So I went in and did that. I pitched an idea for a kids show, thinking my experience as a teacher would maybe kind of open that door for me, and came up with an interactive kids show long before interactive was a thing. And they said, well, we can't give you a job, but we'll give you some money to do a pilot. So I went back to my friend from the Tragically Hip video, Grant Harvey, and said, can you help me do this pilot? So we went all in, you know, made a killer pilot for this kids show. And the TV station at the time was WIC, which is now Global. Said, well, that's amazing. We just don't have the money to give you to do the rest of it. So just on a trip back to my university in Regina to visit some friends after I graduated, I went and played it to the class of seniors that were graduating that year. And in the class, the back of the class was a guy, a visiting professor who was a renowned news guy in Canada, Knowlton Nash, was there watching. And he said, okay, that's awesome. I know who you should send it to. And he had me send it to somebody else at CBC, who then took it on, and they took it on as a development project. And I got to do a full season that way with CBC. So somehow over that course, coming up with my own idea and my own way in created that opportunity. And once that series was done, I still needed to work. So it was continuing on with Grant in terms of doing music videos and commercials in particular to kind of stay producing. So it's still, whether it's today or back then, it comes down to finding a different way in sometimes than just being the loudest or applying the most times.
I definitely agree with that. And that kind of goes back to almost like the individuality of it, because as I said, there's a room almost for everyone in film. There's also an endless amount of ways to get into it. And then in terms of like what you do now, if you could just dive a little bit into that and how your career kind of currently looks day to day.
Okay, well, day to day here at Bow Valley, I'm the industry engagement lead, kind of responsible for outreach to the film industry proper for the Den and this fabulous space we're in now, and creating awareness for the space and finding ways to have the industry intersect with us here in order to have that space gain some traction, which we're doing. We're about to do something with a small development pilot for APTN and a couple other things that I would love to tell you about, but it is starting to get some traction that way. So it's taking that experience and the people I've met over the years to introduce them to this space and maybe a different style of technology that can be a tool for their project. But in addition to that, I still am actively producing. I have a series coming out on a broadcaster called AMI, March 30th, about disability history in Canada. So full series coming out then, which I'm very proud of. And also just other projects that come up, being able to help with them when I can.
That's really amazing. I'm very excited to see the one on the disability awareness. Would you say that Calgary specifically has a good setup to help people get more into the industry or to help develop the industry?
Absolutely. I mean, Calgary has long been a haven for people that want to have this majestic site for their films. And there's such a rich history of features and projects that were shot here because of the mountains, because of the Magic Hour, because of all of that. I when I came in, it was car commercials. Could have Badlands, prairies, city, and mountains all within an hour of each other. So we have this rich location to work with. And from that, we have grown an industry of other professionals to go along with that, from everything from running technology like this to other people with other expertise to round out the industry as a whole. So, you know, that creates a ton of opportunity for people.
For sure. And in terms of the climate currently to do with Calgary and the film industry, is it more at a low currently or more at a high in terms of like productions coming through and the, I guess, traction we have around, or has that changed in the last, say, 5 years?
I don't know if 5 years is where the changes occurred, but certainly, you know, if you ask anybody in this industry, the strikes affected it. Sure. Dollar affects it. So many things affect production coming here. And, you know, the current climate in the United States is one as well. There's a sense of America first happening. But to me, that shift needs to happen and needed to happen anyway. Mm-hmm. And that shift is to the rest of the world. I mean, yes, there is a film industry created in Hollywood, but the rest of the world has grown in telling their own stories. And we can help the rest of the world in doing that too, that we're helping Europeans, South Asia. There's so many other places that we can work with to have them interact with this industry and the place we live. But I think it's also grown enough that we have to start championing our own from within so that we're not waiting for work to come here, that we have work that is happening, that everybody is pitching or developing to not start, but certainly continue growing as our own Alberta industry from the top down.
For sure. And that kind of leads me into what my next point was going to be, was about kind of structural changes or cracks that maybe you can see where we are again in Calgary right now, and like what structural changes need to happen to keep up with the industry and to keep it alive here as much as possible. And you answered that a bit, but I don't know if you have any more thoughts about how we can kind of restructure and keep growing.
Well, I mean, that's everything from training just at places like this, that we're putting out talented people all the time and finding ways to keep them busy. There's so many other outlets for things right now too, of digital entertainment and things, not just the traditional broadcast and film, but it's also, you know, getting support from government and other places that we have incentives to bring this work in. And right now, we're seeing some good ways that's happening. They are supporting development and script in terms of you don't have to wait for a broadcaster or a distributor to sign off and say, I like your idea. There is money for you to access to properly develop your idea. There's money to do production as an Alberta producer, and there's money to do bigger productions that do come in here to incentivize production that's coming here. But there's also a new thing happening where there is a training bonus so that anybody in this room, anybody at Bow Valley can be brought on by a production and be mentored, and that production can benefit from some additional incentive and grow people to be further along in the industry. And it's kind of an interesting climate to have that happen where it's a finishing school, because you guys all come out and you've got the skills and you've got projects. And by the way, I did see the year-end ones in December. All great, all 3 that I saw. So it's like, now what? Okay, well, now you have to go learn to navigate yourself in the industry on set and with people. And again, to advocate for yourself to getting into those spaces. So those training things and those incentives kind of help foster this finishing school in a sense.
Yeah, once again, you keep answering all my thoughts, but if you had any advice for the students going into that career who are in this room or at the school to help build a career rather than just find a job in the industry, what would you say the kind of distinction between those two are, like how to go towards the career rather than just having a job?
I think it's the career. There's a sense of resiliency and patience that you need to have in this business. And by virtue of that, it's not for everybody to do that. And being able to have a support system to carry you through those moments to get going. But a lot of it is the soft skills, how you carry yourself, how you talk to people, how you communicate, how you are on set. I've hired everybody from interns to all kinds of hires over the year. And the term I love is flappability. If your flappability is low, then we want you, right? It means you can adapt. It means you can react. It means you can respond to others and collaborate with them to solve something. And so for me, it's those kinds of skills that really go a long way. But sorry, you might have to repeat part of the question, because I did have a second part of the answer other than the soft skills that way.
It was just kind of like the distinction between, I guess, as you kind of went through building the career versus having the job. And you kind of, I think for the most part, went through that.
Oh, I do remember now. And the advice I give to everybody is be a good writer. And that doesn't mean you're the one cranking out the 80-page script. It doesn't mean you are the writer proper when you're credited. It means you're good at communicating in a written way. And that's everything from a sticky note to an email, to a script, to a treatment, to a pitch, to a cover letter to maybe apply for something. And writing also isn't always the written word. It is pre-planning what you might say to somebody when you're in a situation in front of somebody you want to work with or are working with. So if you're always thinking like a writer, you're always going to be prepared, and you're always going to have that kind of process underway and kind of pre-visualize where you want to be. And to me, writing is the block that all of that comes from.
Well, and I guess with that, it's also to do with like writing on a broader spectrum of how everybody interprets the story in their own way, because the camera guy kind of has his own sense of the story. The script writer has his original sense of the story, and everybody's coming together with their own images of the story that they've written in their minds to bring together one production. And that's really special. But in terms of the productions you've been on, is there one particular story or one of your favorite productions, or maybe one of your least favorite productions you've been on that you can identify?
Oh man, I have so many least and favorites, but that, I think that's the beauty of what this is if you're doing it right and you're working with good people, your current one is your favorite one. And right now, my AMI project is that. It's rewarding on many levels. I love history. I am a champion of other voices, hopefully, in what I'm doing, and we're telling some important stories that way. But everybody on that production was driven by the stories we're telling. So yes, you can get a wicked good shot, but is it serving the story? So you make a good point that everybody has to be serving the story at the end of the day. Otherwise, we're all just pointed in different directions, doing our own thing. But my favorite things, I think, in my career, I have a unique claim to fame. And you've heard of the Canadian Heritage Minutes?
Yeah.
I am the record holder, having produced 8 of them now.
Wow.
So that is the record, and something I'm weirdly and very proud of. But all of those stories are special because they live on. You know, that if you do a commercial, if you do a film, I've done live things like the Canadian Country Music Awards and things, and it goes out there and it's got a shelf life. But when you're capturing moments of Canadian history, there's a lot of meaning to that, and it stays. Those stories endure, and so do the versions that I was fortunate to be a part of.
100%. That was pretty powerful. I guess when it comes to like, does the pride for you come from presenting the voices or having the voices heard, or a bit of both?
It's a bit of both. I think just knowing that it lives out there, it's funny. Like, I've done things where, you know, the CCMA awards are in front of a packed auditorium and it's going out live. And so you can feel the audience there, which is one thing. But then you have other things that go out there, whether it's a TV show or a commercial, and you are in your own home watching it go by, and you imagine somebody else taking that in. That's a unique feeling. I remember when I was doing print journalism, sitting in a Tim Hortons and watching some guy with his coffee in the newspaper stop at the page of something I knew was written on. It's like, okay, this matters. This means something. But, you know, like things for like the Heritage Minute, my kids go to school and they saw the Terry Fox one of the ones I did. And my boy comes up and says, "Dad."
That's really sweet.
Sorry, it's a thing.
No, that's honestly amazing. And I think that's part of what everybody feels in the film industry. And it's the interconnectedness between us behind the camera and society, and how it all comes together to be a new story, kind of going back to like the previous point.
Well, not always a new story. Like, I mean, some of these things are about stories that are familiar, but you're finding a new angle, or you're finding a moment, a smaller moment in it that people don't know. And that's sometimes a unique way to pay off a bigger story. Like, there are stories out there that have been told many times, but if you find a unique way or a unique voice to do it, then that's the story, right? Exactly.
Well, and I guess it's all about interpretation in the film industry. Sorry, you blew me away with that one thought left. But what kind of, I guess you're more drawn to those kind of projects now, but is there a difference between when you started out, because you did still start out in journalism and that sort of thing, in the kind of projects you're going for now versus then, or what inspires you more now versus then?
I, as a news person, I mean, I've always loved documentary work, and I think the space is so much bigger for that now in such a positive way. When I was doing it, CBC had things on News World where there were documentary streams, and you went with your projects to those traditional broadcasters to get in those streams. But now there's ways for you to tell those stories, and so to be able to interview people about their stories and work with people that are very skilled in creating imagery to go with those, that to me is still the sweet spot.
For sure. And just in terms of like media in general, do you think the growth in media formats has helped our industry specifically, or kind of deadered it a bit more, or just changed it?
Changed it, I think. I think every generation, incarnation, technology goes through times where, you know, it's a deterrent or it's a leg up. And, when I was first starting out, we were doing commercials here, and, you know, the big commercials get done in Toronto on 35 millimeter film. And it's like, you guys have less money. So we had to champion things like HD and digital cameras in order to keep up. So there's that sort of necessity and invention kind of thing. So everybody has those tools, but I think, you know, you've got all the tools at your fingertips, to be able to edit something. To do that on a laptop in my home was unheard of. To have a camera that you could borrow from somebody that would be of quality just wasn't there. So you've got a lot more tools to kind of grow and expand your skill set. more so than I think people did to have to wait to do a project at school or find the money for a short film. You can go out tomorrow and do something.
And I guess that also just the accessibility between people to just have it at their fingertips versus having to go through a course or having to do rentals or things like that has brought, in my mind, a lot more creativity into the space because we can hear from so many different minds. But I also know to some people, they feel a little pushed out of the space, or it's the traditionalists, I guess. But
well, there's room for both. I mean, with creativity, yeah, you've got it all at your fingertips, but creativity, I hate to say this, but it needs discipline to really thrive sometimes. That if you've got a camera and you've got all the editing, you've got everything at your fingertips, it's limitless. But there's still discipline in order to tell a story in a timely manner, to tell it with the resources you have, to tell it in a succinct way for the viewer. So you still need discipline in terms of that. And even if you're not shooting on film, if you just decide you're going to spray the room and wing it, you'll never get done. But you need to plan. Your actors need to understand what their role is, how they're working in that scene, your wardrobe, your art. Everybody has to still work together. So if you're not communicating that vision with some discipline, it still goes out the window, no matter how creative that idea is.
Exactly. And I know discipline is a big thing on any set that you're on, but throughout your career, what would you say are some of the attributes you've really liked working with versus some of the attributes you've really kind of had a hard time working with?
Well, it's people when they come into something knowing everything, and not sensing they've got room to grow. That's a huge hindrance to creativity, I think. That to me, being a good producer is understanding that by virtue of holding the title, that does not make you the expert in everything. It makes you kind of the champion of the idea, but your job is then to communicate it to everybody else and to kind of wrangle their creativity and their ideas and their expertise and facilitate that. So to me, that's the success, is being able to bring it all together and be the maitre d' or whomever to make it happen. Because if you're going to go in and be loud and be the one that knows everything, it won't get you that far.
For sure. And how would you say that you best kind of facilitate that growth from your role or perspective?
I think it's an approach that anybody that knows me knows. I often lean on the joke that I'm a middle child and have some skill in being able to listen and evaluate before acting. And I think production needs that. If you go in with the best, the first idea always being the best, that's going to hold you up. So being able to step back and kind of really see the vision and understand when you need to fight for it or when you need to fight with it is really what you need.
Definitely. And even what you said with thinking things through, that's also an important part to be able to weigh your kind of costs versus rewards in that situation in a more emotional way. And then just kind of leading down here, is there any, I guess, fun stories you have from your time in the career that you'd like to share?
Oh, sure. Fun stories. There's a lot. It depends how much time you have after being in it this long. There was a time I almost got in a fist fight with Megadeth's road manager. Oh. So I was a student, not unlike you guys, studying and had my camera out to do a news story about something on campus, and Megadeth was setting up to play, and this road manager guy comes storming in and says, "Who the hell are you? What the fuck are you doing with that camera? Get it out of here." And was right in my face and just had to stop and say, "Hey, this isn't about you. I am a student here. I am supposed to be here more so than you."
Yeah.
And again, kind of de-escalate what this guy was hardwired to do, was to fight with somebody at all times. And that goes back to your earlier question about being successful in this. Sometimes you will run across people in this industry that feel that they need to be in a fight to be working hard, that that they're not getting the most out of it unless there's people being yelled at or you're into it with somebody. And I think I'm seeing that hopefully fade away over time. But, you know, I still run into people like that, and those are some of the weird stories that way. But
I think there's people like that in every line of work, but once again, for the students or for people just starting in the industry, what would be the best way to kind of deal with that from their perspective, or diffuse the situation, I guess?
well, that comes down to your soft skills. Some people can't. They're just not wired to do so. And sometimes you need those people around too. Like, honestly, sometimes the people that are fighting for you in those kinds of ways are necessary. And it takes everybody to do these things. But, you know, just the other thing I would say is also recognizing what skills you have. That maybe you started out that, oh, I want to be a director. And you can probably go around the room and everybody says, I want to be a director. Not everybody will be the director. So in that path, look for the things that you find are fun, rewarding, and successful at. And that might lead you to something that you find valuable and meaningful in the end as well. So to me, it's you're in those situations, keep your eyes open for maybe some other things that you might feel value in. For sure.
And once again, still along the same kind of path, do you think that kind of the film industry has changed you as a person throughout your lifetime, or do you think it's just kind of helped support who you always were?
Wow, what a great question. I think, you know, I'm still the guy that's put on the puppet show in grade 3 deep down. There's that need to kind of do something and make something happen and create something. But I think it's changed me in terms of how I approach things. With art and those things go commerce and some business sense, and also a sense of marketing and a sense of, you know, still advocating for myself in a creative space. That it's changed me and really required me to grow in a lot of ways. But, you know, the reasons we get into this and the reasons we kind of like really like it at the end of the day, I think are probably there from the get-go.
The passion's there from the get-go, and then you're just kind of being molded throughout the career, I guess, in some ways.
And to being back here, I love being back in a post-secondary. I was working with another one, and it was kind of like, you know, a nice full circle to it, which, you know, having taught and done those things, it's kind of nice to see a culmination of all of it too.
For sure. What would be the ideal outcome in your mind from the students you've taught in the film industry?
The ideal outcome is for you guys to continue working with each other. Your network are the people you're with now, and that shouldn't change. Those people should be your strongest allies in this. That even when you're out there, you know, looking out for yourself to get yourself work and still, again, advocating for yourself, these people are the people you will lean on. And in my journalism class, 30 years later, I still do that. There's a small little pocket of us that we talk, we interact all the time, we lean on each other. That doesn't change. So the people you're maybe working with now, those are still going to be people.
Well, and then even in terms of like networking, because I know the biggest part of film school for me was definitely the networking that I received from it and just getting out there and getting to meet people in the industry. But if you don't necessarily have that opening, how would you go about recommending someone to start their like networking journey or to just meeting people in the industry?
Be present. I mean, it's not like a cold call kind of thing. Like, alarmingly, over time, I've had the phone ring and it's somebody on the other end, and no word of a lie, do you got any work is the first, that was the opener. So, I mean, it's just being present and being yourself and being able to talk to people. That it's not that classic pitching yourself, elevator pitch kind of thing. It's just learning to be in that space and carry yourself, whether it's film festivals, whether it's things like Ampia, other things, networking things that the college might have, and also things that are not even industry related. You don't know who you're going to run into. And, back to what we talked about earlier, we live in a weird world that intersects with the larger world out there. And so sometimes you're in the room and you're the most interesting person they want to talk to because, wait, that's a job? Tell me more about that. And so you have that opportunity to represent yourself that way. So it's just about being present and finding ways. And I know that not everybody's comfortable doing that, but it becomes better the more you do it.
For sure. And like, I know I've even met people at work at like the pub or something. They'll come up and they're a cameraman for a random TV show or so on and so forth. But do you think the city has enough or a good level of kind of events to do that networking at, where it is kind of more film centered or more media centered towards the events? Like specifically for networking, I guess.
I think there is. I think there's a lot of organizations, like the International Film Festival, the Underground Film Festival, Society of Independent Filmmakers, AMPIA, APIA, APA. There's so many things to join, and our own Film Commission and Economic Development is good with putting those things on. And when I was in university too, there were certain pubs and hangouts where it was almost like a media club. So I don't know where those exist now, but those are just as important, those spaces, right?
For sure.
Where creative people kind of tend to gather, and it's not like in a lottery winning sense, being in the right place at the right time, but the more you're around people, I met somebody, somebody needs somebody. Oh, I ran into Nikki. Yeah, actually I did meet somebody last week. And if you're in that space, your odds get better.
Well, and then like in terms of the actual interactions, I know a lot of people I've met have kind of been afraid or unknowledgeable of how to start that conversation. So how, like when you're out and about, you meet someone at a pub, for example, how do you start the conversation of, oh, I'm in film, and connecting with people in that way, I guess?
Well, you mentioned what you are, but the best thing is to ask people about what they do.
Yeah.
Get them talking about themselves, especially in film. Ask them for their advice. Ask them how they get started, what they're excited about, what they enjoy. Get them talking. That you shouldn't be on the spot, and the conversation will be short if you put yourself on the spot. Say, here I go. Here's my pitch. I'm going to tell you all about me until you hire me. No, ask them. Get information from them, and chime in that way. You'll get more out of it.
Well, and that goes back to being a good communicator and being kind of the number one things you need in this industry. And then I think we're sort of running down on time here, but is there anything else that you'd like to add or that we haven't touched on yet that feels important for the listeners to hear?
What do you want to do? So now we're in a room, we're networking. You've run into me. You've been asking me for my advice and what I do and all about me. So now it's your turn. What do you want to do?
Well, I've been working in the special effects industry in movie and TV for about 5 years now. Now I'm going into more set design and production design. So it's a bit more of all of the visuals, so that I had the chance to be able to move up in the career, because I get a little bored if I'm stagnant for too long. So it was just about opening more doors for me in a creative space. Okay.
What drives you to want to do that? I mean, there's so many things in this industry. That's an awesome one. I know people that are very good at that, but not one you hear all the time. Why that?
I've just always been a creative person, and I went into social work for a little bit, but I just was getting so down without having the creativity. And this kind of gives me a way to almost still do that and still do something for society and for people, and to get out there while still being able to maintain that creative lifestyle. And like, I was raised by an art teacher. I graduated with like an art-centered learning degree. So I was always in the arts, and it's what I'm comfortable with. And I just needed to get to a place where I could still have a career and progress and not kind of reach that stagnant point, but also keeping the creativity alive.
Must be an element of social work still in this.
For
people
sure.
Say, hey man, you were a junior high teacher. Yeah, there's a bit of that still sometimes.
Definitely. The social work goes everywhere, but especially in film, you have to interact with so many people who aren't always the easiest, as you've stated. And it's just about figuring out who someone is and what the best way to meet everyone's needs is, I guess, without stepping on toes.
and don't be afraid to make that part of the conversation too. You've just told me something that sets you apart, right? And for me, that was having been a teacher to pitch a kids show. I was like, what sets me apart from everybody else wanting to be in this industry? So sometimes, and often, it's about, okay, you've been to film school, you've done the work. What else is different about you? What makes you different? And sometimes what else you bring to it becomes very much a part of where you go.
Well, and like, I know for me, the reason that I do get work quite often, like even with the special effects, is because I can be the everything girl. And I found in the industry, no matter what section you're in, if you're someone who can just go, yeah, I'll figure it out, then you're someone they're going to want to bring back. So long as you successfully do that, which is also an important point.
Okay.
To keep everything mindful, but the more you can do, the more you can get hired.
All right. You want a gig next week?
Depending on the time.
All right. Done.
All right.
See, this works.
Perfect. And then is there anything you'd like to promote before we kind of close down here, or any projects you're working on that you want to?
Well, again, for those that are seeing this, have not been to the production hub here at Bow Valley, it's unique. It's wonderful. It's a place where, we can be a huge asset to your project. We can make your project happen. Some magic can happen. Do that. And then also for my other production, AMI, broadcaster in Canada, which doesn't matter what cable box you have AMI. And March 30th, it launches. It's called History in 60. And the 60 because it ties back into the Heritage Minutes and telling historical stories about Canada. So that is March 30th it hits.
Perfect. I'll be tuning in. Alrighty. Well, this has been Brent Kawchuk on our hot set. And I hope you all have a great week.